Well, we'll get it sorted out here.
Like I said, I can't see anything. No,
We'll get to be quiet or step outside.
pulpit right on the side over there, so that everybody can see. And when the camera focuses on your face, it's not hard to move. Where's my crackers?
I'd like to
Call to order 2025 Resiliency and Restoration Committee meeting for Monday, April 14th. If everyone could stand and please state the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ashley, can you take the attendance, please?
Chairman Carl Rock,
Present.
Vice Chairman Chris Leeds,
Present.
Member Daryl Rose.
Here.
Member Linda Rodriguez. Let the record show that Member Linda Rodriguez is absent from today's meeting. Member Ron Padova. Let the record show that Member Ron Padova is also absent from today's meeting. Member Devin Aaron. Let the record show that Member Devin Aaron is also absent from today's meeting. And welcoming Member Robert Hubbard.
Present.
Present.
Okay.
Yes.
Good deal. So we have
We have quorum.
Mr. Mueller.
I would like to make a correction there. Bob Hubbard replaced, no?
No.
No.
If she were to attend today, she would still be able to be part of this committee.
Because I thought we recommended and voted on that at the last meeting.
No, based on, yeah.
All right.
Based on what the lawyer said, she is welcome to attend today's meeting.
Okay.
If not, yet Hubbard gets to take part.
Cool. Okay. So do we have the minutes from the last meeting? And do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Have a second? Second. All in favor of approving?
Aye.
Done. Okay. Moving on, the last couple of meetings, we've done a lot of work around elevations and whatnot, and I thought I was feeling a little frustration as far as progress. So I thought maybe kind of resetting a little bit and kind of giving a baseline for everyone might be helpful. And then we can get into, the task at hand. And probably the one thing that's furthest along is Sunset Boulevard as far as those elevations. So I did a couple of things to what I thought may be helpful for us looking at the city. And Ashley, could you put up that first schematic? Sit that one there. Okay. So in conversations as we were going through our past meetings, we tended to be looking at the full nut of the city. And I thought it may be easier for us to think about things maybe in components. It would accomplish a couple of things. It would help us focus more in on specifics in those areas. I understand that this breakout here is somewhat reflective of our drainage basins of the city for the most part. So what we have is south of the river and west of 19. We have north of the river and west of 19. We have east of 19 and north of Ridge. And then we have south of Ridge and east of 19. So just to kind of help us break down our efforts and maybe be a little more focused, but also making sure that we're giving attention to the different areas of the city, not just one. So does this pass the sniff test? So that's the question to you guys.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Okay. So with that, the other thing I did was, can we go on to the next? Okay. So what kind of got this committee going, I think to some extent, is when we talked with council as far as sea level rise that we've seen to date in the various areas of our city from when they were developed. So the south side of the river started getting developed in the 1920s. Things like Harbor Point wasn't until like the 1990s. So we have a myriad of how the city was developed. So what we shared with the council at that time was this schematic that shows when the development took place and an estimate of how sea level has changed since that development occurred. So, for example, if you look at Harbor Isles there, which is off of Miller's Bayou, it says since 1968. From 1968, there was about 5.8 inches of sea level rise. That was what we shared with the council. That was based on St. Petersburg, which at that time was kind of the bellwether for the region as far as where to look because they had the oldest records in place. So, since this information, 2019, I thought maybe looking at it again because now the Tampa Bay region has gotten more focused on this. They've had a group of science types say, here's the basis that we want to look at St. Petersburg, but also what the rates were. And generally speaking, that the rates of seawater increase have been increasing during the 20th century, and they're increasing faster in the 21st century. So each of the communities have been recommended by Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council to take a look at what it means to you in your situation. So Clearwater did a lot of work in 2018 to 2020 timeframe. And as you move north along the coast, it's not the same as Tampa Bay estuary. Things tend to be more. So Clearwater has a higher rate than what St. Petersburg has based on factual measurements that Clearwater did versus on the historical data of St. Pete. So with that, actually, if you go to the next page. So remember that 5.8 there. So if you look at, this is updated. And this takes us to like 2024. And if you look at Harbor Isles, 1968, instead of that 5.8, in reality, we're at like 9.3 inches since 1968, based on the Clearwater metrics. So the increase from what we shared with council several years ago has changed anywhere from about 0.9 to 3.5 inches. So, and then to harmonize with the rate projections that Clearwater's talking about, 2025 to 24 to 2040, an increase of about 6 inches, and then out to 2070, about 17. And as the committee had discussed, we were going to use 2070 intermediate high change as our bellwether. So what I wanted to kind of do was reset everybody as far as the best guess on what we're potentially looking at. And the reason why I did this was we were talking about roads and such. So if we had this basis, we at least know what the playing field looks like. Does that make sense to the members? Okay. So, any questions? I know this is new, so I apologize, but.
Well, no, I looked at scientific data. I don't have it with me, or what I brought with me, but we're talking about sea level rise, and there hasn't been any since 2006. It shows here 2000 to 2024. It shows that the yearly change is none. It's been 4.38, and 25 years later, it's still 4.38, but now they're projecting it's going to double in 6 years. How is that?
It goes back into, at least, this is what the experts are saying it's going to be going faster.
Okay,
How
well,
fast is open to debate.
well, how fast is the true scientists that have studied sea level in the Chiles and all around the world, Australia, Africa, United States, first of all, it's not going to be higher in St. Petersburg and not in Clearwater, or higher in Clearwater than it is in St. Pete. It's going to be the same. So the studies, why the studies vary? Because they measure from the ground, where the ground settles, like in Italy. They show what the sea levels, they found the sea levels rising in Italy, but then after the scientists went and tested it, sea level didn't rise at all. The ground was settling. The buildings were settling. So the true scientists, most of the ones that all the ones that I've studied, say 2006 sea levels haven't risen at all anywhere around the globe. Sometimes they expand a little bit to heat, but they don't have any expansion as far as rising significantly to notice. And there's a lot of questions of why people ask, well, why is it not rising in my backyard? Why is it the same? I still got the same low tide. I still have the same high tide I've had in 40 years. Well, because it hasn't been, that's why. So if you have, my main concern is, protecting our shorelines to storms, because we definitely have seawater rise when hurricanes come, and winds can blow the waters up. And that's more of a concern, and that's something we should address. But as far as the actual sea levels rising, I've seen all the scientific data. I've studied it for years, and there isn't any since 2006. And they don't project it to happen, even if where's it going to come from?
I would encourage you to take a look at the NOAA data associated with Clearwater.
I've looked at it.
From 73.
I've looked at it.
And the trend shows
it's very, very little is what they're showing, but still,
okay.
Yeah. But like I said here, you got studies. What actually they show here, 2000, 4.38 millimeters. They've shown a 22 millimeter rise in the Chiles. It was over a course of like 35 years or something like that. And their studies they continued the studies, and after 2006, they showed no sea rise anywhere on the globe. These scientists, and they give the data to know it too.
This information is from the Tampa Bay Climate Advisory Panel.
Okay.
So they're the local purported experts that Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council is utilizing.
Okay.
So if we're not, if we're in line using this, great. If we're not, then okay.
Well,
I just wanted to put a stake in the
ground. There's a lot of
lines
lines out there. You want to use those, and that's fine.
Well, the committee.
My main concern is when you have sea level rise to storms.
Okay.
And you address that, then you won't have any issues with that either. I just think you need to address it according to storms.
Okay.
But you're talking about raising Sunset Boulevard?
Well, that was part of the reason to do this, to say, okay, if we're going to do something with Sunset, because right now our low is at about a plus 2.85 in ABD.
Right.
So the question that we were debating was, well, how high can we go without adversely impacting stormwater runoff? And what do we need to do if we're saying make an investment? We're telling the city to make an investment of, I don't remember what the city manager said is a cost per linear run of road and drainage.
Right.
To make a recommendation, we want to make sure it's high enough so we're not getting flooded in 5 years.
Yeah, if you're trapping water, you're looking at a huge expense.
So if we make any recommendations, we just need to make sure it passed the SWIFT test.
So the purpose of elevating road is for people to get out during storm drain, or what is it, for this to have people can drive down the road when it's elevated, because you're going to elevate the houses too? Or
the conversations we've had is debate was to look at egress and ingress from the storm evacuation standpoint, or for first responders, if required. So having either making recommendations on we need different vehicles to get in, or we need to do something with the roads so they can access, but there was some minimal level of a solution that felt obligated to push forward to council.
And so just trying to find a middle ground where you here. we would also have, whether it's from settling or rising water,
Mhm.
right? We have roadways that just under a combination of a high tide and a moderately heavy rain, we have areas that flood now.
Oh,
Right,
Sunset's
so-
real bad.
So in addressing it, regardless of whether you think it's rising sea levels or some combination of settling and maybe poor planning 50 years ago and 40 years ago or whatever it was, I think we've got a combination of preparing for storms and addressing some immediate needs we've got right now that appear to be getting worse in some places, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so the raising of the roads would only be for access for vehicles.
Right.
That's the only reason you would raise the road. Otherwise, you're gonna have to raise all the houses around it. And then you're gonna have to put a wall up. You have to put a seawall up, because if you leave the seawall as it is, you raise the roads, you raise the houses, well, now everything's just gonna wash out. So for Sunset, for example, to do a short-term fix before you do the law is make that seawall bigger and make those people that have, because it all comes up those man-made little boat ramps that they have made. They're at ground level with the road, and so when high tide comes up, low tide, it's already halfway up that ramp. So when you get 2 foot of the high tide come in, that's how the water ends up being on the road. So, and honestly, I don't even think a lot of those people even use those boat ramps because they have docks.
Right.
So you got to close those in. That'll help Sunset from flooding in most parts. And same with the marina. It comes up their gate. I was out there with Derek the other day, and I was showing him that this is where it floods out, where Davis and Chasco is. That gate that's right there, that at the marina, that's where the water comes up, and that's how that area floods right there. Down the way, down Sunset, kind of where Pat Rogers is, it comes over the seawall a little bit, and it comes up the little man-made boat ramps. So start would be getting rid of those boat ramps because they all have docks. So those boat ramps have probably been there since the 50s.
The boat ramps, if they're some more problematic than others,
And-
you could
And
put
some
them
of them are just broke
notice.
off. They're janked. They're ragged. Like they're not. Yeah, they're not.
Or they could, owners, if they own the private property, have the option of raising their property and improving their boat ramp so that it doesn't flood. I mean, that could, if that's the option that they have
Yeah.
on the problematic boat ramps, I suppose.
Because their docks don't flood that their boats sit on, so it doesn't get that high. It's everything else
That
that's
road-
low.
That comes in, and if you worked on storm drains over there recently,
Yeah.
you've done a lot of good work over there actually, and you've got problems with it flooding down Davis Street over by Limestone too sometimes.
Yeah,
And you raise the seawall and raise the road and raise all around the river, it's still going to, the water will still get back in there usually.
yeah. So because all of our drains, everything from Davis, that map that I had, everything from Davis, Chaska, everything floods to the river. And when your inverts are almost at the negative tide part, there's nowhere for the water to even go. When tide comes up, it floods the storm
Well,
pipes,
I talked
rains.
Yeah.
There's nowhere for the water to go until low tide comes and sucks all the water back
Matt's
out.
first week here, when I talked, the first thing I brought up was storm drain lift stations. Not just there, but over by Washington Street too.
The only thing is that we have to find a place to pump it to. We have nowhere
Yeah,
to pump
if
it
the
to.
tide's high, it won't go out.
Exactly. So you're gonna have to wait for low tide anyways, just like how our city drains right now on low tide. Everything will drain on low tide, but when it rains, majority of the time it rains and it's already high tide as it is. So just the
You got,
water's
I
gonna
mean,
drain.
the problem I see, it looks like limestone area and Sunset Block was built kind of like on swampland.
Yeah.
It
It's
seems
the old
like it was very low. It's all very low
Yeah.
over there. And elevating the road and the seawalls and all the ground, like I said, around the river, you're still going to have water get in there at high tide. It's going to get in there somehow.
Exactly.
How do you do that? I mean,
A lot of the storm you're gonna have to reverse and flow somewhere else and not to the river.
Well, that kind of goes back to our conversation. Do we tell everybody to get high lift vehicles? Or do we do something else? and the road piece was the something else. So what is the viable path on that? Mean sea level is at about 1.6 something feet here in Pittsburgh River.
Yeah.
So that's when you look at our low points on Sunset at 2.85, that means that we have a high tide and maybe a little wind blowing, and that's why that floods. And in the last couple of years, the tides generally have been running higher than average, on average, from what I see, not counting a storm, to your point, Bob. So what I thought is, we talked about levees, we talked about closing off those access points or mandating that potentially to anyone that has one to provide some protection that way. But we haven't gone forward with any of those types of recommendations. But if that's something that we should push forward, we can certainly do that.
Those full moon, super moon tides.
So,
What tides?
so tomorrow at 2:36, if nobody's seen sunset during a high tide, I encourage you guys to go over there and look at it.
So keep your car away from the water.
Just go down Chasco till you see the water, then just back out. You don't have to drive down Sunset. You can see it from a
Don't
certain
drive through the
spot.
water.
I've seen it. Yeah, I see it.
That's
all
why
the
we
time.
had to put signs up that says
I've been going out this
high
river
tide.
since '83, and it's been a problem ever since I've been here. Does it seem worse now? Certainly, some areas it does.
I mean, today and tomorrow we're both 4 feet. So
Well, that's kind of what, when we were looking at this, I looked at the elevations along Sunset, and if you look at that 2.85, to be able to deal with it for maybe the next 15 years, assuming a high tide and maybe some wind event, you needed like a +5. So that involved raising it up 2+ feet there at the belly.
Mhm.
All right. And in order to get your grades and looking at home elevations and all of that kind of stuff, what kind of cost is associated with that? Is that something we want to do?
That's enormous cost. New Orleans was built below sea level.
So that was what led into our conversation. Perhaps because we have the federal channel, we should be talking to the Army Corps about levees, which there are no levees in Pasco County or on the West Coast right now. But maybe that's a conversation that we should begin having. Don't know.
Well, they got huge water pumps and they got levees, and that's what protects that city.
just see what they were.
We don't have to have that scale, but something like that is what you'd be looking at.
So that's the part that if that's something that we think is viable, that we want to move forward, so be it.
Mhm.
But I was trying to just take a micro look here to see what are we really talking about. And it looked more complicated and difficult than I had hoped for.
Yeah.
Ashley, can you go? There's a map there of Sunset.
Is it further down?
Yeah, right there.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Yep.
So I don't know if you can see that, but those elevations there were intended to be able to address those high tides and also buy us out to 15 years. Okay, so from 2.85 to 4.5 is a lot, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Okay, to change the landscape there. Is that something that's even reasonable to consider? Which is part of the reason I just threw a stake in the ground for us to talk about.
One thing too, I stare at all sorts of areas of the city on the property appraiser site, and I'll tell you, I'm not sure how this even works, because a lot of the roads and everything, even on Pier, it's like private property technically. So I'm not even sure.
Yeah, it goes all the way out to the middle of the river.
Yes, but I mean, like even where the road is, that's like technically part of people's property. I'm not even sure how that works as far as raising it and stuff, because it's a lot of It's a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of. You know what I mean? I mean,
I know there's a lot.
You're messing with people's property technically, even though it's, I guess, a right of way. Would it be technically?
Yeah.
But
Well, that was part of the reason why.
Domain to where it kind of.
yeah, but
If
that's
you
a lot.
wanted it,
That's
you-
still a lot to deal with. You know, that's a lot of rigmarole to be.
Well, a lot of these people want us to
So-
do something.
Well,
So this is the ramp I was talking about right here.
Right.
It comes, floods down this way, floods this way to about here. Also floods around this area and floods down up in here. Those are the spots that Sunset floods on during high tide.
So to kind of move us towards where we were going, what kind of things do we think are viable to address this? Because, like I said, I threw a dart there to have something to talk to. That seem unreasonable? I'm cool with that. But what are the solutions to Bob's point? Because the community is looking for answers, and this seemed to be one of the most problematic areas on a routine basis. Do we go to the Army Corps and say, hey, we need a study here to look at levees and how do we protect the federal channel? And
I would start that right away.
so, I mean,
But we can't pay for it. I guarantee you that.
There's so much water too coming from. Yeah, I've been staring at these maps, at night, and there's so much water just coming off, from Pasco County into our area, and just clogging up our canal, whether it's dredging going down or lifting our stuff up. It's just, we really do need help from, the bigger municipalities. We just don't have the money here, obviously, but like levies or something, that's, like you see what they're doing in Japan now. They're just saying, all right, we're done. We're going to put up these, I don't know if you saw that, these 30-foot concrete walls. I love it. I think it's great, but and actually where we are, because we have the Gulf and the limestone shelf is there and it's solid, you can actually, put piers down and build up top of it. You could actually build like a giant wall out there to protect, because we really need to protect, so much property inland. And, even if you get like a mini tsunami or something like that, we've never had that in, our lifetime or anything, but you get like 100-foot wall of water. Geez Louise, there's nothing to protect against that. We all don't take that serious, but that's like a serious phenomena that can happen. And it would just devastate the entire area. The problem is something like that would spring everybody into action. It's just nobody ever wants to spend money preemptively is the issue. It's hard to sell that, pitch that.
well, I think that's our task, is what can we be preemptive on in a reasonable way? Are there things that we can recommend if this was a recommendation? Or the recommendation is what we really need to do, because we don't know, is let's make a recommendation to reach out to the resources at Army Corps, potentially do a study of what we can do to protect the federal waterway and the city, given sea level changes that are occurring and storms as well. Because we don't have the wherewithal to develop an answer.
Looking at all your data, really, 3-4 feet is elevation around the river, all around that whole area, all the way down past America Marina. Everything would probably solve your problem with water pumps. The problem is you got houses, but if you had water pumps, then if the water did get in, you could pump it out, and the levees on the road, that area would keep it out, at least during the tide surge.
The other part that's certainly on the table is that we're not going to do anything, and we're just going to plan to do retreat. If that's a strategy, okay, but what we just need to think about the consequences of our decisions. And
I would, like I said, reach out to Army Corps engineers and explain to them our situation and see what they will do for us.
okay,
Yeah.
Got a motion.
Would that be Daryl would do that, or?
let's talk about that to a degree.
Direction from Matt.
Daryl?
I'd have to get the direction from Matt.
No, you don't have to. You're on the committee. What do you think?
We should at least get a study done, Fred.
Okay.
We should at least do that because I mean, what's it going to hurt?
Chris?
Agreed.
Deb?
Yeah, a study for the Army Corps to maybe do something with the findings that we come up with, right?
Or have them assess. I want to change your motion.
No.
So I make a motion to reach out to Army Corps of Engineers to get a study done on our lowland areas.
And protecting the coast.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Cool. Dig it. Progress.
So who is reaching out to?
What we'll do is, with that motion, we'll recommend it to council, and as a formal recommendation from the committee. And Ashley's got it on black and white now, so we'll transmit that to council at the next session.
Mr. Chair, if there's any way that I can have somebody else address that motion or remake the motion just in the event, based on this situation right now with Linda's seat, if somebody else could make the motion, he's more than welcome to second.
Click. Okay.
Make a motion, we reach out to the Army Corps of Engineers, request a study how to address our low-lying areas and federal channels.
I'll say this.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I just wanted to bring to your attention that Member Devin Aaron is present from today's meeting. You guys were in an extensive conversation. I didn't want to interrupt, so for the record, Member Devin Aaron is present. Yes.
Ashley's the boss.
Thank you. That's what we count on to keep us straight on this. Okay. So for this piece, we can kind of set this aside as far as sunset goes right now, because this is the approach that we believe is the viable steps forward.
I still think we should have stormwater lift stations, but that's another kind of part of the same issue, but another stormwater lift station.
Isn't like pumping it.
Somewhere. One of the things that we talked about was how do we get areas where we can do that
Right.
stage. I went to the EMC open house this weekend and spoke with Swift Mud and Tampa Bay Water as far as getting with their people that have expertise in either stormwater retention to capture water and hold it, and maybe do some things to help our saltwater incursion on our wells, and hold back water flowing into the Gulf through culverts and stuff during high water events, and extending that. I used to think a couple of miles, but actually having the county change the rules to look at stormwater from an enclosed basin standpoint rather than an open basin standpoint, which translates to about 3 inches of rainwater in 24 hours. May not be enough, but it's at least a starting point for a discussion. So that changes the development rules along the coast, that maybe gives us a little bit more of a buffer from rainwater type situations. And in maybe storm situations, if it's dry, we can use it for the stormwater pumping. But I have not heard back from either one of those since that was just this weekend. But just FYI. Okay. This moved faster than I thought. And she's gone.
Yeah, somebody's down.
Okay. Can you see if her mouse is movable? See what's next on the.
Her mouse is movable. She really
Yeah, check her mouse.
All right.
Just as a sidebar, I did pick up the latest Army Corps survey from 24 of the federal channel. If anyone's interested, I have a copy.
You wanted me to.
Try to multitask here.
That's okay. Just trying to go on and
Where do you need me to go?
just move past this, because this was the. Hang on in that one, because I want to fuss at Daryl a little bit. That 3.5 or 3.8 there,
Yeah.
I am not drinking the Kool-Aid on that one. And right there at the intersection of Old Post and Bay, that's actually the high point there. And the bottom of the swales don't extend.
Where's the Kool-Aid?
Everything comes like this and flows this way.
Right. But those elevations are the manholes, right?
Yeah. So, and they're road elevation.
Yeah. And I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid on that 3.6. There's no way. Excuse me. There's no way this is a foot higher than that. Not buying it. I think something's busted there. Swales don't extend this far. The swales are past the entrance here, the first entrance.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the swales start. Now, the swale numbers may be okay, but the bellies here, I don't see one of these manholes. So I didn't know if some of these may be off to the side. There's actually a low manhole there that is, I think that's sanitary, not storm. But that is the high point for that whole area, and I can't see it being 3.6 feet. Yeah, because the water, when we close off the road, we close it off here, and the water is in this
But
area.
it all drains this way.
This way into the Gulf.
To where the 0.70 is,
Yes,
all it drains that way.
right, but the water queues up
The
here.
water comes in, goes like that, and straight down the old post, and then drains out that way.
Yeah.
So it comes in here, there's an invert here, it comes
Yes.
in, goes up, fills this ditch,
Right,
fills that ditch, does not fill this ditch.
Mhm.
Then when the low tide comes, all comes out here. There's one here where everything comes this way and out to that.
Yes.
right. But the road part is what egress was what I was looking at.
Okay.
Not having this road closed was a potential improvement
Mm-hmm.
that we can move forward, probably needing to do that sooner versus later.
Yeah.
I'm okay writing off Sunset because we've got a path forward here. But this part here impacts the apartments, Sand Pebble, and basically we're funneling everybody down Old Post, which is outside of Grand Boulevard, has no easy escape route. So minimally having that for late departers is a concern personally. So I think, and I believe we have some monies planned for Bay Boulevard for improvements. So whatever improvements we make, other than just doing a take off the asphalt and put it back, I don't know if that's a prudent expenditure.
Right.
The only thing Bay Boulevard is just the mill and resurface
Right.
was also involved in that. The whole Bay Boulevard, $500,000. That's all we've got going
And
on.
they're redoing the base, I believe, at that intersection.
Right. It's the area that we lose with water that if I spend $500,000 or $250,000 and I don't address that, to me, I'm not being as prudent as I would like to be. So I'm just wondering if we can incorporate something into that as well
I know.
versus coming in after we've done the repaving and then, hey, we've got this great idea.
Well, I think the rationale that Matt had with it was we were some 10, 15 years off from being able to do something there. And so the road is in such a bad shape that they're going to go ahead and mill and resurface it with the intent that later on down the line we do something there. I don't know if they can do anything now without a certain amount of engineering and whatnot.
Yeah, so that right there is that manhole in that intersection. And then
What do you see there? Share with everybody.
no, what I was showing Devin is that
Just on
that
Bay
man. I was just telling him the manhole in the intersection was that manhole right there. That's the 3.6. And then the one in the sidewalk is storm.
At the northwest.
Yes. And then there's one on the south side of the intersection that's storm as well. That goes across. to that open drainage. There's two on the there's two at the intersection. There's a storm manhole here and here on each side of that intersection. The sewer manhole is dead center.
Right in the middle of the.
In the middle of the intersection, yes.
And that's that elevation. That's the part that I was questioning. But if we don't feel like we can do anything with that belly in the road,
It's tough.
I feel it's unfortunate, but I'm willing to, move on if nobody else in the committee thinks that's.
It needs we need like millions of dollars to do it.
Which belly we talking about?
To the east of Old Post.
Okay, so, the first step there is to do a study, which, is probably $700,000. The second thing is then to go out to bid on it. That's probably to raise that road. Just that section of the road is probably north of $4 million.
Okay.
And I say that because you'll say, well, it's about $1 million a mile to build a road. How can it be $4 million? Well, the problem is the houses, right? Because as soon as you raise up 3 to 4 feet, probably, maybe more, you're going to be creating two things. One, another belly, where now you're impacting private property. But secondly, you're going to have accesses to their houses like this, which by no stretch of the imagination would any engineer ever, put in there. And so you have to, and as soon as you do that, guess now what you've done? Yeah, well, there'd be a lot of that too. But now the driveway is above the house. So there's millions of dollars there.
I agree with that because of the cost of road.
Yeah.
But I would submit with accurate elevations, we may be only talking about, and I don't know how exact, I could talk to the neighbors, how deep that water gets. I would submit probably not 12 inches. So if I could do 12 inches there on that belly, okay, for probably less than a couple hundred feet, does that get me something to keep that open during a plus water event? Okay. I'm not talking about the whole road. I'm thinking something in the interim until we can do that more comprehensive look.
So two different high water events we're talking about, right? So one, storm surge, right? So
Not going to get high enough.
right,
So, yeah.
you're never going to
getting
get up
win
high
that
enough.
battle.
And so actually three different water events. So one is storm surge. Second is blue sky flooding, right? And that at the worst is maybe 6 to 8 inches on the road at worst, and probably not the whole way across. At least since I've been here, that's what I've seen. And then third is a storm event. And I guess you get a fourth one, a storm event with a high tide, then it'd be higher. But the storm event actually, if there isn't a high tide, the storm event comes off of, what's that road right there on the side there?
Quiz? Down below?
No.
Tabor?
The north-south road.
Not Old Post.
No, right there. What's that? Tabor. Because that's where the flood starts when it's a storm event. It starts there and it'll come back over there. So the easy solution, the less costly solution, is not raising that road for 3 of those 4 things.
Okay.
Right? The easier solution is, and you have plenty of right way to do this, is you get rid of those swells and you put pipes in the ground. And you oversize the pipes so when you get the blue sky flooding because of king tide and all that, it stores there. And so you won't see that going over the road. That's also going to help you when it gets to a storm event, stormwater. I mean, the water will be able to get out a lot quicker. Will not help you though in a storm event with a high tide because that water's not going anywhere.
Right.
But you build capacity within the pipes to at least mitigate some of that. Another thing with all of that, 2 things. One is how to get the water over to, so would be between the Kryman property and the back of these apartments, which is Ritchie, right?
Yeah.
How to get water over there. So you're pushing it away from Bay Boulevard, you're pushing it over there, building capacity on Blue Sky. So when you get those, so it won't affect blue sky flooding. But when you get a storm event with a high tide, it forces water over there. And so it's not impacting you at all on Bay Boulevard. The other thing is over on the pond that goes ultimately connects to 19 comes down, and goes miles into the pond, is finding storage there. So when you're getting a high tide, the water goes that way to a certain thing. And so again, you're minimizing the water going back into those pipes. So you don't have to worry about the high tide impact on the storm system.
So if I'm following correctly, what you're describing is we need 600 to 700,000 to at least assess the situation first for that problem and the solutions you're describing. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've put money in for that study already once,
Okay.
but we don't have all the other things we need to have in place to force that money. But we will hopefully next year be more successful in doing this. And the state's going to, unless they get rid of their grants for this, we should be in line to get that money. And so that'll be the start. But honestly, if raising that road the way it needs to be raised is probably 10 to 15 years down the road. And just from the dollar amount, it's going to be a crazy amount of numbers that you don't have.
Right.
I mean, we're not going to pull $4 million out of thin air.
Is there something the committee can do to help that process? Is there anything that we can assess or provide, or do you feel like that's moving along in a reasonable fashion?
So one of the big things that I would think that the committee would be a part of, we put in the money for the stormwater master plan, and in that, doing that, which we should get funding for, you as being kind of the steering committee for that, because out of it, there's going to be a lot of, look at stormwater, but also, what are the impacts of how we handle stormwater now and the impact on the estuaries and waterways and all that. So there's natural tie-in. So I think that's where you fit in.
Okay.
On that is you'll help start guiding, because I mean you've already talked about quite a bit of the things that plan is going to have to consider and come forward with the different solutions to it.
Okay. Folks, thoughts? Make sense?
Yep.
Daryl, you want to jump in? I probably cut you off. I apologize.
Oh no, Matt covered it wrong.
Because he's saying it right though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. So to piggyback on what he was saying is down here, up here, and down by Miles are three totally different things we got to worry about. So this right here, this inlet affects just to here.
Uh-huh.
That the property he's talking about that goes out to Ritchie is affected by that canal that goes down Coons.
Yeah.
So it comes down Coons, comes down, goes around on where the hike and bike is on the other side of the rail, goes down to where behind the apartments, goes out to Ritchie. So that's how that area floods in.
Okay.
And so if I could just
real
quick. So what I'm proposing in all this, and he's hitting on, is how to use the system that we have and retrofit that system to be effective towards getting us through the next 20 to 30 years. Because the unknown in all this is, where is that water level going to be, right? Because if we're talking a foot and a half difference in the next 20 or 30 years, again, everything I'm saying is irrelevant. But if it stays relatively the same, then you start trying to figure out, okay, how do you disperse that tidal impact on the city, so it doesn't have a negative impact when you get a storm event. Because those are the two things that, right? You know, the blue sky flooding we can deal with. I mean, it's an issue, but it's not a big issue right now. At least for that section. There's another section of the city that's different. So then, you know, the question is, how do you dissipate those high tides across the three different areas that he's talking about? So when you have a storm event, it's not going to cause an issue. And so what I'd be proposing is there needs to be a connection between all three. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know how you do this. But there needs to be a connection, so when you get pressure on one, you have two more to back it up to be the overflow, right? And so where he's talking about there, you know, again, a tidal impact, we don't want it to impact the other two. But if the other two are getting impacted, which do have an impact on the roadway and residents, we have to figure out how to push it over to there. And so again, the solution here is capacity. And so an example would be if you look at how that drainage system goes out, you know, I'd be looking at, okay, let's follow it, make it deeper, make it wider, so there's less of an impact, so it has more capacity to hold more water coming from other directions, whether it's stormwater or overflow. And the same thing would be the southern piece of that, which is the part that 19 connects into Miles, goes to, you know, how do you make that bigger so it takes, so in the middle, you know, the water's always away from the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to worry about it.
Gotcha. Makes sense, folks? Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. Ashley, what do we have next on there? I think these were the things as far as the roads piece, but it sounds like between the Army Corps issue going forward,
That was it for those.
and this, I think we've got that. Okay, that's the piece there. Okay, and planning and zoning, since Sean's not here, I think I was hoping he would be here because I think there's an opportunity now for the city, and given the different things that are going on, but there's been looking at conservation easements and mitigation banks for wetlands and whatnot, and there's 30 acres of buffer property that is available out Bay Boulevard on the north side, and it is a unique opportunity for the city at this time to potentially acquire that and potentially have a revenue source out of that rather than just owning property and taking off the tax rolls by using it for developmental exchange to get things that we may want in other areas. So we could sell those things to the developer and potentially, and I'm not an attorney, but developing some revenue components associated with that. This property is, I don't know if the developer realized that they probably can't develop it given the latest storm issues.
Which property are we? To come off the car bay?
I'm not sure that it's where the last of the houses are on the north side of Bay Boulevard. There's that new 2-story house there, and then there's vacant property.
That's for car bay.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. So anyway, so those 30 acres I was describing, as far as the opportunity, creates a buffer for storm surge. At the EMC, they showed me the line that they had enjoyed here last year. But getting land off the books to me is not necessarily a prudent deal, but some of my acquaintances over on the east side, this is a big business as far as being able to do development by being able, as a governmental entity, being able to provide that to the entities that are coming in to make investments in your community. So I think if that's negotiated prudently, we get a revenue source out of that land, and it's not just static. So if we do this wisely. So it was something, because I saw this was available, I thought I'd bring it up. I was hoping, Sean was here, he'd probably have better context about it.
What's the idea with that? Because that's platted property. I've walked back there. That's high land.
Some of it.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
a lot of it's been wiped out by the storm vegetation.
Well, right, but I mean, a lot of trees have died from that. But I mean, that's like precious property that should be developed, right?
Don't know.
For sure. I mean, that's we only have so much land in the city, and that's good. I mean, that is a platted piece of property, and that's a good piece of land to build on. It's just not built yet. But I mean, somebody filled that in once upon a time. That's my backyard, and I mean, that's I don't necessarily want to see a gigantic apartment complex or something there, but they had plans drawn up for that just several years back for Vacara Bay. I mean, that's like a lot of people, and they were going to do a boardwalk and everything else. I mean, I think that's probably a good. I mean, we only have so much land in the city that's platted and livable and able to build on and stuff. And I think it'd be crazy to turn that into like what the Audubon Society is doing and whatever. You know what I mean? With that, waiting for the ocean to swallow it whole. Because we only have so much, tax base here anyways. I mean, we're trying to grow the city to some extent, and like for instance, like developing that could give us the money to maybe raise Bay Boulevard, because that would be the exit. You know what I mean? There's a lot you can sort of do there. I mean, I just don't. Are you saying like as a buffer for the storm surge?
It accomplishes a number of things, but if I could get more development in a preferred area, maybe higher density versus a lower density there, and I get more value out of that versus developing there, then there's the economic model that makes sense. Okay, I don't know what all's in the hopper at the city, but if I could give a developer greater potential because I was able to offer this, and there's a baseline, be it it's in the special flood hazard area, what they can and cannot do. All right. But if I can get more value out of this over here and sell them credits over there, it's a small price to pay because my dollars are over here. Yeah, I get dollars there. All right. I get
so
that.
What are you actually insinuating? Like, how does that?
What I'm suggesting is what's being done in the state of Florida is identifying couple of things that have come out from the storms. One is for cities to have buffer areas, particularly along the coast. And in the developed area, you have little that's bufferable. Okay. But then my acquaintances use that as trade-offs for larger, more expensive development because they've got that to give away. It satisfies the state environmental cadres because you can do a lot more by negotiating over here. So it's a trade-off between the two. So in that the opportunity presented itself, I just brought it forward for something to talk about because it's available now. It may not be available tomorrow. All right. So that's the only reason why I bring it up. If it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But hence bringing it up.
They did spend money on a whole study for Vacara Bay. I don't know if anyone's even looked. I have the file for it. It's a pretty interesting thing. And it's something that the city. I think it's great for the city. I mean, it's just bringing more people and money to the city here, and it's not really it's not like congesting anything. It's like it's like a 50-acre parcel. I mean, it's huge. It's not all buildable, but it's like a pretty good plat. Yeah.
Well, I only bring it up for.
Yeah.
I'll just say that I know Swift Mud had put a kibosh on the development that was most recently looking at going there.
Right.
For a number of different reasons, I'm told. I don't know what those reasons are. But I was told that was kind of the thing that killed the last development proposal was coming in. There is upland there.
Yes.
but there's not a lot of upland. So their
Right.
density, they were basically going to be building on pods within those acres.
Right.
So I don't know
Hmm.
how all that. I mean, you bring up from my perspective. That's something people that make decisions have to make a decision on, right? Because to purchase that and take that out of the ability to collect those property taxes, which
Right.
help drive services as well as keep the cost of services low per person. I mean, that's the calculus that has to happen. And so I don't know, because I've never had the opportunity to talk to the council about going that route with it. But I think it's one that needs to be discussed. And not only there, on the south side, you also have all that property on limit too.
Right.
Right.
And again, both, the things that they share in common are, what was possible 30 years ago is not possible today.
Yep.
And what was platted off of limit 30 years ago or thereabouts, it was like 900 units. You couldn't put 900 units on there if you tried today because everything's changed.
Right.
And so that particular property, I think there was a thought of what could happen 20 years ago or 30 years ago when they first started splitting it off. But there's reality today what they can do. And
Yeah.
again, I don't know what that partnership, I mean, maybe there's a partnership between, the developers and the city that get in there and, but I don't know.
This is where I thought there are people that are very knowledgeable about this area that we may want to reach out to do a little bit of due diligence to say, if I had these 30 acres and that accomplished X from an economic model standpoint, yet around the waterfront overlay, I had different ideas. All right. And if having that available for a developer for something more, don't know what more means. All right. But if I could do some horse trading there, maybe the dollars make sense. And somebody that understands this better than moi, certainly, may be able to do that quick numbers on the back of the napkin and say, hey, this has some legs. I would seriously think about it. Or you're on drugs. Don't worry about it. All right. It's not worth the
word
time.
you're not using is offset. Right.
Yes. And that's exactly what,
Environmental offset, right?
but what it buys you, I don't know
Right.
the specifics.
Right.
All I know are players that have done stuff
Right.
in sensitive areas because they had these offsets to play.
Right.
So it's like, okay, if that buys me something where I have
It's-
nothing,
So
And I think that's 100% of what I think was contemplated in your creation is to look at those ideas and make a recommendation on the city council that, hey, here's not only here's an idea, but we've looked at that idea and here's how we would recommend you go about it.
I think that we have a lot of old development in the city, and I think a lot of these environmental practices are really stupid. And I think we have a lot of opportunity to actually like for Cara Bay is like a blank, clean slate where you can actually build something beautiful of the right elevation where you don't have blue sky, nonsense and all this crap. And you have an opportunity to actually do something in the future. Instead, we're horse trading land that's not even developed and potentially never developed. And we need to develop all this stuff because we need new, fresh property. And
we don't need to develop all of it. So that's where I understand what you're saying, but if you develop all of it, then you don't have the area that you want to have. So if you know anything about the Keys, right? The Keys got to a certain point where they said, hey, we don't want any more development. If you're going to build a nice big new house, you're going to have to buy an existing property, tear that one down, take the septic tank out, return it to a pristine state, and then you can build your new house over here. And so there had to be an offset, right? And in our area, if you develop everything, the flooding problems and the storm surge problems become worse, right? So we need places for water to have a place to go. right? You want environmentally, you want the area to still have places for, in that area. There's bald eagles nesting. There's all kinds of stuff going on, right? And so you don't want to drive all of that out. So the idea that maybe you use that and preserve it the way it is, and it's not as developed and not overbuilt, and then you maybe overbuild and develop in another area.
Where though? That's my point. And I apologize, but these are platted lands. This is all we have to work with.
I understand that.
To grow the city. And we're talking about getting rid of platted property so that we can let I get it, the bald eagles are really important, and there are bald eagles.
No. Pardon me. Part of the problem that we have is that plans and development 180, 50, and 30 years ago was stupidly done and not thought out. So just because it was platted and, hey, we're going to have high density property here, doesn't mean that it's in where we sit now and knowing what we know that it's a good idea for it to have been platted that way. So all I'm saying is maybe we need to take a look at this and say, is there a better way to use that land and shepherd it going forward? And then we can, I would argue there's plenty of places where we can take stuff that shouldn't even be in the city anymore and develop it, tear it down and develop it again. Right. And so I agree. We need massive progress. Yeah. I think you and I are on the same page with that.
But this is like a blank slate. And as far as flooding and things like that, where the water is going to go, this is basically waterfront property that we're talking about. Right. And when you go up, you see the Gulf. I mean, this is like multi-million-dollar development we're talking here to bring. It's funny. We're like talking about basically giving up the last development the city has, where Limit Drive and Vacara Bay and all these things that should be developed, to their fullest potential with the biggest kind of money coming in. We need to, I just think it's phenomenal that these are even here at our disposal to have a developer come in and bring in a couple thousand people into our city and build brand new things. Because what that does is it builds a base for people to come and then tear down the old crap. Because right now we basically just have a bunch of old junk that needs to be ripped down and redeveloped. But to bring in the new stuff at the current code and everything like that, bring the properties up. And as far as drainage and stuff like that, these are waterfront properties. I mean, it just goes right out to the Gulf.
So can I ask?
Sure.
Can I interrupt for just a second? Do we have anything going on at the city from a redevelopment strategy? Much to your point that many of the things that we have are older. So a lot of communities that are trying to evolve, Detroit is a classic, of how do we go from where we are to where we'd like to be from a lot. Is there anything out there today that we've got in the hopper or we're thinking about that you're aware of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Can we get into that?
Yeah.
For 2 minutes anyway. Well, I'm trying to
don't
run for it.
Cramp my ability to talk. But can I, before I do that,
Yes.
can I just, because I think this is actually the debate that needs to happen within the city.
Sure.
Right. That
100%.
needs to be decided because.
But the question for me is here, is
Right,
this
right.
the right venue?
Right.
I don't know if it is.
Right. I don't know that either.
I mean, half the council's here.
But,
I mean, geez.
but we have to ignore this. But let me just say though that what you're leaving out is that these areas. I guess the question you have to ask is why aren't they developed? If this land is so great and so ready to be developed, why is it developed? I'll answer the question.
Oh, sorry. I
Yeah,
apologize.
it's an easy answer because we face this when we talk to them. It's not what they always say. Do you know how much money we have to spend to bring Phil in to build what we're going to build? So I'll use the Kryman property, which is at the end of Ritchie. So it's the property by Walmart, right? You know, they're estimating, it's been estimated, that's over $2 million of fill just to build on probably a third of the 20 acres. And so that right off the bat is a killer to any development. I'm pretty sure what killed that property over there's development was Swiftmud was saying you're going to have to bring fill into these areas, even on the upland. You're going to have to bring fill in to do that.
Yeah.
And they didn't do all the surveying they were supposed to do, and so they said, well, then we're done.
Oh wow.
Until you do all this surveying, forget it. And that's tens of thousands, if not more, in cost to survey that they would have to redo. And so they're right off the bat, not all developable land is developable because of that, right? I mean, it's not because the land can't be developed. It's just the costs are so much that it's now from a community's development perspective, you know, and you know, look at Newport Richey. Newport Richey has a very active CRA. You know, you go over there, and because they have a lot of money as well within their CRA, you know, they'll throw a few $100,000 to you to help, you know, offset that fill cost. And so it makes it a little bit more palatable for those developers to do the things that they want to do. They also have that offset program where they can get density because, you know, they have properties that you know, will never be developed, and you can buy into that, you know, what,
TDR.
yeah, exactly, transfer of development rights. We don't have that. We have kind of the bones to do that, but we don't have that set up. But here, I guess, to finish that point, to go on to what Carl asked me, is we need to make, because we don't have endless amounts of money to do these things. But if we decided that this, you know, between Limit Drive and this area off the Bay Boulevard, you know, we want to put our money on Limit Drive because, you know, there's a higher potential for denser development there and better development, and, you know, the infrastructure is already there, and we're not going to be impacted by, I mean, I'm just making these things up.
Sure.
But it makes sense to focus development over there. Then it would make sense not to try to invest in an area that's not going to be as good for the future of the city on a lesser developable piece of land.
Sure.
And so that's I think, again, the debate that everyone within the city needs to make is we have to pick and choose where we want development to occur, and then use our limited resources to make that development happen. So to answer your question, so you know, obviously the waterfront is one of the prime. A lot of effort has already gone into that, and I think we're kind of at a cresting point where I think it'll be downhill, which is a good thing, in terms of development happening there. And once that development happens, more development is going to happen, and more development will happen, right? You know, council as a CRA, and I'm going to actually be talking to them next Tuesday about this. The next big area that we want to start investing time and effort in is Grand Boulevard, and so that you know, will be something that I think is going to be on the forefront of the CRA's agenda to start pushing how do we redevelop those areas. Right now, again, we don't have a lot of land that's not impacted by a flood area. High. So I mean, all of this then goes back to something that, again, what you were talking about is these are all areas that if we say this, you know, Grand Boulevard is a better place to have more residential and commercial development than over here on Bay Boulevard. Well, it's going to be hard for those places, but if you have, you know, transfer development rights and all this, now all of a sudden you can possibly make a denser development over on Grand Boulevard and use that resource, which really are the development credits or the ability to develop those other areas, and so you leave them alone. You don't need that because you can do the same amount of development someplace else, and it's in an area that's going to be less impacted by future rise in the water. It's not going to be impacted necessarily by storm surges. Blue sky flooding is not going to happen. All these things that, again, make for better living conditions within the city, and you do it someplace that again is in need of development.
Thank you.
Yes.
Um,
Is that 2 minutes?
Well,
Was.
I think
Perfect.
this is the struggle. We touch on so many different things, and I feel like our mission is sort of clear, but not too clear.
It's good though.
But
Yeah.
this was one of the things I just saw become available, so I throw it out there for conversation. And if we think we want to do a little bit more due diligence on it, we can certainly do that going forward. If you think there's, I'll certainly take the monkey and run with it because I'd like to learn more about it. To me, it's an interesting area. I know big dollar people that are doing it. It's like, I don't know how it works. So maybe to me, it had to give us some bottom line benefit to do. So, okay. The last thing I want to mention is we have am I right? There's only one more thing.
What?
Okay, I thought you were keeping me honest here.
No.
Tampa Bay Regional Planning. Give me a sec, Dave. Tampa Bay Regional Planning session. It's in the minutes. So if you didn't see it, there's an agenda in there. It's at the very bottom, isn't it? But also it's down in Palmetto, Florida. So I don't know who all is planning on going at all.
We need to know.
Yeah.
We do need to know if you want to go.
Yeah.
Because we have to get that.
I'm in because I changed my schedule for it. So I'm definitely in for that. So the agenda is included in the packet. If you hadn't seen it, it looked relatively interesting. I don't remember, where was it last year?
Clearwater.
So it's a little further away, but
Probably less costly parking though.
so it's just a matter of going and stuff. But anyway, the agenda's there for FYI. I'm going to commit to Matt right now. I don't know if anybody else has or desires. You can do that offline.
Matt, we're on.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
You guys are count, so you don't count.
What was the date again, Ash?
May 15th and 16th.
May 15th.
It's a Thursday and Friday.
Thursday and Friday.
I'll be in Texas.
Yeah. Well, I'll go. So, Matt, are you planning on going both days or uncertain?
Definitely one day. I don't know about the second day. But
Okay.
Again, the second day is kind of more focused on the resiliency awards that they do. But
So you're going to coordinate any transportation or?
Dave says he'll drive.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Okay, very good. So that should be good. I met Pete Altman from Newport Richey the other day, and he's pushing hard on that. I didn't realize he was a member and all.
He's the chairman.
He's the head,
Yes.
the chair of their resiliency.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, had a nice conversation with him the other day, so that I think can bear
Is
fruit.
there anybody else?
I didn't.
Nope.
Does it? Sorry. No idea how busy I am right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is. Let me make sure. One other thing. Sorry, guys. Okay. So what we have in summary is that we have a motion that we're sending to council about the study from U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for along the federal channel and particularly Sunset. So we have something on that. We'll get the specific translation from Ashley. Can bring that to at next council meeting. The sea level rise update. We had fair discussion on that. Are we comfortable moving that forward to educate council on that, or what's our thought on that?
Sure.
All right. All in favor of moving that forward? Do I have a motion?
Motion moving forward.
Okay. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right. Mr. Mueller, I think we're finished up here.
Dave Mueller.
You have to say your address now.
Yep.
New meeting.
Wow.
I'm actually our city council representative for the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. And we are bringing that back. In a previous council meeting, we did indicate that there was a group that were going to go, and I believe the city manager is going to be communicating that effectively. For my edification or explanation to help me understand, when we're talking about this particular piece of property that we want to do trade-offs on, and I'm just going to spitball here from the center, the property next to Walmart, it's got certain density limits now. The property on Bay, it's got certain density now. Are we suggesting something to the effect of the individual or company that would be buying the property next to Walmart would buy the property on Bay, and in lieu of developing the one on Bay, they would develop more on the property next to the Walmart? Is that what would occur?
Conceptually, but what the state and feds are recommending is that the governmental entity be able to do that. So hence, my thinking was that we investigate the acquisition and be able to use that as an enticement for the type of development we want. So
I see that, but if we buy it, it comes off the tax rolls and then it declines, but essentially you get a bigger tax base with the developed property, I guess.
But that's the investigation from the economics.
And essentially we could develop that into a park, which has a very low density to some degree.
Yeah, the rules are fairly specific from my understanding.
What you can use that property for.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's the due diligence that needs to be done.
That's kind of where I loosely, that's the way it is. The other question I had is, you guys are going potentially to the Army Corps. I thought we were going to investigate at some point how to get a maintenance permit for maintenance dredging for some of these issues and problems that we had. Is that something that's happening through?
I'm supposed to be working.
Or
So
We're making recommendations for our task is to make recommendations to council.
good.
The current recommendation is
I
going,
can act upon that once it comes that direction.
that recommendation right now is going forward is to suggest going forward to Army Corps to get a study done around levees in the federal channel. That's what's on the docket to move forward.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
So one thing I did email Ashley, and I'm trying to compile. So what I'm trying to do is I'm compiling all the information I could possibly get. I even have the Vacara Bay plan from I think like 17 or 18 that never got developed or whatever. But it's actually pretty good if you look at it. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get all the pitch decks we've had, all the John. The mayor gave me the information he had from a thumb drive, but I know you've been at this for a long time. I know you've been at this for a minute, and I just want to compile all the information I can to one central thing so I can make it as lucrative as possible for the city to make a plan and say, hey, and I'm even looking at some of the older ideas of incorporating the canals up north and tying that into, Miller's Bayou and stuff underneath the bridge, and maybe even opening that up further and creating like a flow, if you will, because we really need a flow to clean out these canals because it's just stagnant water. No, you don't think so? That's okay.
Tide pushes in and it pulls out.
Sure.
And I mean, we've
That's okay.
We've had
Just-
there's a theory floated by an individual that Miller's Bayou should flow radially is the term that he uses.
I don't know
almost like
anything
a
about
toilet
that.
flushing, right? Almost like a toilet flushing, and it never connected on the north end. Water, the tide pushes in just like it does on
Sure.
a beach, pushes in and
I'm
pulls
not.
out.
I'm not
Right.
saying. I'm not dying on any hill here. I don't even care. I'm just saying. I'm looking for as much information as I could get.
Sure.
So if I could get all the information from you guys that you possibly have, and you as well, and anybody, if you know some old timers in the city who got some stuff, if I could get that information, send it to Ashley. Ashley will get it to me, and I'm going to compile all this stuff and work on it, and I'll come up with something to present to you guys
Next time.
No,
Good.
I need some time with
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
I really
Okay,
need
well, I didn't
some-
know if you wanted to give us,
Right.
call out 15 minutes or so and give us a rundown on where you are or what.
No, I really want to work on this like hardcore,
More.
and I want
Okay.
and
All right.
also too, I'm trying to use the technological angle of it to sort of compile it all and,
Okay.
and do that, and then what I want to do is I want to go to other than the county. Who should I go to for like historical records as far as like these plats and things like that? Well, somebody knows, right? Like when they platted all this and they did all this back, in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Remember when we talk about how do we, do we restore it to 1940? Do we restore it to 1950 or 60?
My eyes twitching.
Yeah, I mean, access to
Sorry,
that
Ashley.
information.
I'm sorry.
I think
Sure.
I would suggest, having gone through this before, is you have to
Yeah.
knock on the doors, see what's there, and then based on what you find, that's what you have to go forward with. It's never going to be complete because you can knock the way data's retained here, and I'm talking ubiquitously, is not easy to find.
Right.
So you have to do the due diligence and call it a day. So I would highly recommend, getting what you have and taking a cut at that. Then if you get some more data, you can roll that in and see where it goes. But
Well-
you're never going to be perfect.
No, nobody's
Okay.
nothing. There's no such thing as perfect in the universe here. But what I'm saying is the information that you have and what Chris has and what the city has. If you can find it, I don't want to stress you out. I know you're very busy,
you're good.
and I know that you are busy. Maybe Dave's got some kind of thing in the coffers that he got from Colombo,
But-
or something. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Well, how about this?
Yes, sir.
How about putting together what data you would like? And then we can,
I don't want that. I want everything.
yeah, but I don't know what everything is. I mean,
If
everything.
it's relevant, I want it because I'm not the one that's going to be looking at it. The AI is. You understand? So it doesn't. I don't need to pick and choose and be choosy. I just want to get it all, put it in a central database, and then sift through it. And then my next question is who has the information of the original kind of plats and drawings or something to that effect of when all of these areas that we live in currently today were developed. That way we can say, because
County has that information.
do they?
Yeah, you just have to go. Basically, you can.
Should be with the county.
A lot of that's not on the website,
Yeah,
though.
it is. It's all there.
There's missing plats.
There are missing pieces, but that's where I say
It's very
take a
incomplete.
snapshot on where you go. You're not going to be
Yeah.
100%,
Right.
but you can get all of our community identified there. It's all platted from whenever.
And then
There's
the
different
Army
levels.
and then the Army Corps only goes back to like the 70s, right? So who do I go to before that?
You're on your own.
Well, that's a shitty answer.
I don't know what else to tell you.
Sorry,
If
right.
you've done the due diligence,
Yeah.
you'll.
To be honest with you.
Do I need to go to the state?
You
Does
can.
the state? But well, that's what I'm asking because I know that somebody probably has this information.
To
and
be
I
honest
just,
with you, as a
yes.
records retention explanation, depending on the development of the property,
Yes.
some of those things meet retention and might not be available.
Right.
Sure.
So if it's something that a property that wasn't developed and it hasn't been developed, even if it's platted or not, especially non-platted,
Yes.
they meet retention. So those things, even if there were potential developments way back in the day, they meet a destruction schedule and they won't be available.
What about historically though? And that's kind of what I'm looking
Only
for.
developed
challenge.
property.
And
All I can tell you is a challenge.
well, no, but I'm okay with the challenge. But see, I've never went to the state of Florida, you know what I mean, and even asked for these informations. But I know that you may have. Or
Oh, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
Chris has an
It-
idea.
But you've got to knock on the door because recognize, civilization,
Yeah, yeah.
Florida development really didn't become refined until the 70s and 80s to some extent.
Yes.
It was pretty much the Wild East, if you will, particularly if you go back to the 20s and the south side of the river. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why Daryl has the problems that he does because, we'll just let it
Right.
drain out here, no big thing. So the best you can do is talk to the various entities that you're aware of, the city, one,
Sure.
get what information you can, go
The
to
county.
DEP,
What about the state? Do you know?
Swift
who-
Mud or DEP,
Okay.
and they
That's
may
fair.
be able to give you some, but again, the data is more limited. You think everybody's all seeing. They're not. You're going to find gobs of ways.
Well, I'm okay with that, but
Then-
I'm very serious about this endeavor on the city's
Okay.
behalf. I'm not like, I'm very serious about doing this, and
Sure.
and I always it stuck in my head when you said this multiple times. Where do we want to? Because this to me was like one of the hinge points that you brought up that stuck to me, and this is why I'm almost wanting to dig backwards. Is where do we want to restore this waterway to? 1960, 1940? Do we want to, start talking about mosquito ditches? I mean, there's a lot of things. So with that in mind, you said that stuck with me, and I'm thinking about it. So I want to make this as conclusive as we possibly could make to then sell it accordingly.
Make a decision,
Yeah.
put a stake in the ground, and bring it back to us.
Okay.
I think that 1977 June is the right one.
Okay.
You can't be wrong, okay? But share it with
Sure.
us as far as what it could be, because this is where you found data too, that you could draw some conclusions. Because if you go back before that, it gets harder or it gets more
Right.
vague. So, like all of the stuff that I've tried to bring to the table, it's like, I don't know if it's right, but this is the best that I can find from whatever sources. And if it makes sense and you don't think it's right, okay.
Sure.
But I think that's the best we can do. We would like, if we can get the Army Corps engaged, I think they're going to have a lot more horsepower to bring to the
Right.
table than
I like
our
that.
esteemed group is.
But our
I guess if that's
council.
feasible, right?
Right.
Our council, I talked to them, and they want dredging is high on the priority list. It still is, and we don't have really anybody, working towards this. Really, I mean, I know Matt's working on seagrass right now, or we were talking about that, getting a seagrass study done before I think like May or April or something. You said.
Well, I'm trying to set a meeting up with county staff to talk about getting their vision of the city, partnering with them through their MBSU program.
Yes.
So I'm working on that. But honestly, I think the city's probably better off going our own road and going with them, because we can do everything that they're doing. But again, the first step in that is hiring an engineer and starting the study process. I mean,
Yeah.
the county is not as close to dredging canals as people think.
Right. Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
they gave me, which I was going to share with you, they gave me their study that they've done for Holiday area and the Hudson area.
I
And
want that.
yeah.
You
I
know
was
what
going
I
to
mean?
share that with you.
Thank you.
And so that way everyone can see what the extent of what they've done. I mean, that is contained in the study, and they still have a long way to go before they're actually dredging.
Absolutely.
Because they have, the issue with what's that area called? The preserve,
Nature Coast Preserve.
yes.
Yeah.
But that
That's-
doesn't preclude them the way they're thinking. So
Well, I don't know if they know that or don't know that, but I know when I talk to them, that's a big issue that they're trying to wrap their heads around.
they're getting,
So
but
So-
if they want to know, then I thought, as going through the aquatic preserves, I thought that was going to be more restrictive and limiting. I don't think it will be, based on my interpretation of what's there. So
Not in the city, off the coast. Absolutely.
but even out the coast, it's not as restrictive as, if you look at the fine print on some of the latter stuff, I think there's more latitude than I initially gave it thought. But until we get there,
Yeah.
but just as a reminder, what established this entity, when we went forward in 2020, basically we made recommendations on water quality.
Right.
And dredging was an afterthought because dredging wasn't palatable at that point in time.
Right.
All right. So
Well, but dredging was a tool
a tool
to get
as part of the equation, but
water quality.
we need to get the things that may be an answer to, because that was our whole, frankly, reason for being, that the council said, we want you to look at this. All right. So I'm still operating in that mode until I hear differently. So,
Well, don't want to wait for the county, then why aren't we talking to dredging companies? And they can tell us exactly what we need to do.
but we don't know if that's the answer.
We don't want to talk to dredging companies. You need engineers.
Yeah.
Because you have to get the permit.
Right.
Only way, and so again, one of the issues the county has with their permits, they want to do maintenance dredging. But what everybody asks them is, when's the last time you dredged those canals? And they say, well, we really never dredge those canals. And so then they say, well, you're not talking about a maintenance dredge then. You're talking about an original dredge. And that's a different set of permitting requirements than a maintenance dredge. And so we're going to be in the same boat that they're in.
Yep.
Well, ours did get dredged though back when we did Journey.
In the last 10 years?
No.
The only thing.
Okay, well, you didn't say 10 years. I
Sorry, I left
apologize.
that out.
But there's challenges around that. And that's why we've always believed that we had to put this out with what was really important that would be acceptable. And then, by the way, in order to accomplish that, we need to do some of this.
But it was with an engineering firm that said, if you want to accomplish this, this is all of the things that you have to do behind it
And
to do that.
And so the reason that I want to talk to the county about their program is not so much that we want to be a part of their program, but is there any way that we can utilize what they have done so it reduces what our cost is of doing it?
Yes.
And that's to me the point of getting where I need to get is how much can I use of what they've done? And if we can actually piggyback their contract with their firm that they're using, I can't remember what it's called now. Just call it again. I think. But I don't know what that cost is, and so I know the company that's doing Hernando, for instance, county is Stantec. I know what their costs are, so I just need to get the contract with the county so I can look at it and say, geez, which one is going to be better? But again, not knowing what I can get from them, I don't know. And if I can save hundreds of thousands of dollars in doing what I'm doing, I think a little bit of time is worth it.
Sure.
But if I can't save anything, then yeah, you can criticize that I just wasted a lot of time. But my thought is I can save money, and that's the key.
I think I look to the members here. I think if we respectively can bring things to the table that rationalize walking that path, that's what we need to do. So if you want to take a task on, if you want to take a task, you, bring that to the table so we can see where it takes us. And if it takes us down that path, I think we can all salute the flag. But we've got to bring that to the table, and to date, that has not, because there's been no compelling community reason that I have heard yet. So that's what we need to bring to the table. So I challenge every one of you on that to let's bring it forward.
I just need the data. Like that old pitch deck that you got from that you presented to the council 2-3 years ago. Could you send that to me? 5 years, actually. 5 years ago?
Yeah.
I think Ashley had sent that.
She didn't send that to
I
me.
didn't send that.
That
No,
one?
I apologize.
Okay.
Just whatever you have that's relevant, because I know you guys have been at this for a while. I would greatly appreciate it because I'll make good use out of it. I'm not just pulling everybody's leg here.
And I think that was part of the question. What data do you need? Because the data associated with the canals and the dredging and all of that is probably the most comprehensive data that you'll find. Daryl may have some additional complementary things, but most of the things that we've brought to the table I would submit are not as scientifically based as, and it's more recommendational for a council rather than to say, go forth and prosper on this. But that data is there, and if you would like that original deck, I can say that.
I
Sure.
send a lot of information to him
Right.
from engineers based on
That's what I think would be the most valuable.
So, I mean, while you're looking at it, if there's more specific
I think
information,
I got three.
there was quite a bit of information within what I sent you. But while you're looking at it, if there's specific information,
Yes.
because when you say everything,
That's,
it's vast.
I'm using this AI thing. That's.
but still,
I know it's new to the older generation, but it's something.
AI has been around for 50 years. It's not that new. But I think you have to tell what you need. If you need specific category of information to help it make a decision, that's what you need. And that's where I thought an interim point, if you want to take some time to say, these are the things I'm looking for, maybe we'll have some ideas to help you. But I think just digging into it, making a run on it and say, hey, what's it telling me? This isn't making sense.
I'm trying to update. I want to update a pitch deck. I want to make a new plan. I want to present different ideas. Different pitch decks.
Daryl's got a stack of blueprints from the original engineering of the city that's this big, and it's on paper. It's like this. It's crumbling and falling apart.
You're talking about
Send
from
it to you.
07?
No, and like from 80.
Oh, really? See, that's what I need.
Well, you got to sit down and do
It's a
it.
stack of paper like this.
Okay.
It's not an electronic
So
digital.
give it to me and I'll pay somebody to
Yeah.
scan it.
So when it comes to the only thing that may help us
Yeah.
with the whole dredging thing
Yeah.
is we just had a storm. So according to Swift Mud and DEP, I just sent it to you up there. I just sent the email like 5 minutes ago. If you cannot dredge anything, like so if a storm pushed in any shoaling, any dirt, any debris or anything like that, after 2 years, you can't consider that maintenance dredging.
Right.
If you go before the 2 years, it's considered maintenance dredging.
Yep.
Because it threw all the silt, the soot, everything in there. Because so we have to we'll just use Blue Point as example. All that stuff came from where?
Came from the
From
roads, the construction sites.
Came from
off.
19.
Right? That's where it all came from.
Yeah.
So we have to eliminate that and then start dredging. Because if we dredge, well, what's going to happen? All that stuff is going to be pushed back where? Back inside. It's just going to keep revolving. It's just going to be a revolving door all the way around. So we have to stop that stuff coming through those pipes right there at that park, and then dredge it out. So you got to fix one to fix the other.
The county's just done some improvements on that big,
Yeah.
huge waterwork out there. They put in the ripple effect, to catch the stuff, the small stuff.
And we dug out on Miles, but then there's that section right there that
One behind the green.
we don't know. Yeah, we don't know whose is whose.
Oh, I know what's back there. It's an ass.
So we got to take one step to fix the other step. But we may be able to, from everything I've looked at and done, we may be able to do stuff under maintenance. But
I like that. That's awesome.
You got a week.
that's going to be. But it's got to be like Matt said. It's got to be done through engineers as well. Within, yeah.
So we got a
So
year
we
and a
do
half.
For the storm.
We do something with that. Yeah.
Do we need
We also
a
have to
permit?
prove that that's where it came from.
Do we need a permit though?
You couldn't just. You would have to. I'd have to call DEP to just see. If you need a permit. I mean, you need a permit for everything. So.
But maybe we could get a permit towards the end of that, and then
So,
maybe just use
They
that
may
as a
be able to
loophole.
exempt it. I mean,
Correct.
that's best case scenario is they exempt it from the permit.
So how we were able to do it to begin with was we were under a state of emergency, and DEP recognizes those. You don't need a permit to do maintenance at that point when you're under a state of emergency to clean out, because that's what's restricting water flow. If you're restricting water flow, then during a state of emergency you don't need a full permit.
Right. So,
That's my thought.
Man
All right.
Solutions.
are there any other things that anybody'd like to talk about, or can we wrap
Matt
up?
is right.
Matt,
with
I'm
the
sorry.
engineers.
Just real quick, because I wasn't here.
We are holding you to
started
2 minutes.
beginning of this. I wanted to introduce Derek Smith, who is sitting over there, who is our CRA resiliency coordinator.
Okay.
And so he brings a lot of knowledge and experience on the resiliency side, and is going to be someone that's going to help us push forward a lot of our resiliency programs through the CRA capacity. So I don't know if you want
I come formerly from the city of Clearwater, so I appreciate all the comments. I was there to do some of those reports and some of the digital twins for the sea level rise. So I'm well aware of what you're working with and well aware of the sensor that you are referring to when it comes to the sea level rise as well. So originally from here in Port Richey, Newport Richey, so just been working down there for about 5 years, and finally got back up this way.
So you're on board?
Yes.
Very good. Congratulations. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Questions gotta go.
Do I have a second? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.